Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for August 13th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Jenny. How you doing, Jenny?
I'm great, Taran. We had a little bit of a fun couple of days after the last HOH. We thought that some crazy stuff could go on. Ultimately, it flops, but I still think we're reaping the benefits from that day 44 shakeup that everyone's talking about. So I'm still enjoying this week.
Yes. A bit of a slower day here. Things have been interesting. They have been pretty back and forth, but things are starting to solidify in one particular direction. But I don't think that's super solid by any means. I think that things still have a lot of potential to change, but they are solidifying in a particular direction over the course of the day. So we're going to be talking about that as we go through. We are here to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 21 live feeds. It was day 55 in the house, and we had a veto ceremony. Tommy does use the veto on Christie. Christie officially down off the block.
Yeah, this is what we were all expecting. And so now, there's no replacement. You can't replace the third nominee, and so it's going to be Cliff. It's going to be Kat, and I think a lot of us are upset with how this goes. But I'm pretty. Maybe no one cares about my opinion, but I'm actually okay with Christy sticking around. I think she definitely brings something to this game that I'm not quite ready to lose just yet, and it makes it interesting going forward for next week. I do like Cliff and Kat, so it's not fun to lose either of them, but I still think that there's lots to be excited about with how this shakes out going forward. So I'm not. I was definitely team let's get Christy on the block. That's amazing. This is fun, and I definitely thought it would be hilarious if Christy goes out on Tommy's HOH. I definitely don't love the pre-existing relationship stuff, but ultimately, I don't. I think that this is a good outcome for the game itself. So
Yeah, I mean, I know that people are excited about it. I really do genuinely feel that if Christie had gone home this week via the twist, that would have just meant that Jackson, Holly, and Kat ended up teaming up with Tommy, Sis, and Nick, and that would have been the six. So I think the difference between Christie leaving and not leaving this week is that Cliff and Nicole are now in a sort of six instead of Jackson, Holly, and Kat, which I'm fine with. I have more faith in Cliff and Nicole to turn on that six, and even if they did make it to six, I like those two better than the
yeah,
other people anyway. So that's how I'm feeling.
no, I feel exactly the same. So I'm with you there.
Yes. So Cliff is going to talk with Nicole and Jess. He says that he would love to have their vote this week, but he knows it's going to be a tough one. Jess talks about how she is concerned. She has been concerned about Kat lately. That the Kat is really close to Holly and Jackson, and that's kind of shady, and they don't really know where her head is at. Nicole says she was really weirded out by how protective Kat was of Holly when they were talking about the plan to get Holly on the block. It was very concerning to her, and just says she was like, yeah, I had to explain to Kat that no, you shouldn't be exposing information to Tommy. She didn't understand that. I don't know what is up with her.
Yeah, and Kat, this will continue to be a theme of the day that Kat is really doing a terrible job of, this perception that she is really close with Jackson and Holly, and her words not lining up with that. And when her closest allies, besides Jackson and Holly, are picking up on this and discussing it as well, like this is not good for Kat whatsoever, and it kind of further deteriorates as the day goes on in conversations she's a part of and outside of her. And this is a perfect example of Cliff and Nicole and Jess, all people that like Kat and have been working with her somewhat, are very aware that she has this other allegiance in Jackson and Holly, and it doesn't make sense for her to go after them.
So Cliff is also going to talk separately with Nicole. He says that he's starting to think that because the night before he was talking about approaching Holly and Jackson about getting their votes, talking about protecting them moving forward, which would obviously be the best move all around for everybody if Jackson and Holly knew that Kat was staying anyway, but they don't, and so that would have been a mistake for Cliff. They would have used that against him, but he's now telling Nicole, you know what? On second thought, it seems like maybe my votes are more likely going to come from Sis and Christy than Holly and Jackson at this point, which is unfortunate because he would have loved to work with those two over the other side, but those two are not willing to play ball. They want to keep Kat around. They know Kat, so it's not going to work. Nicole she says, yeah, I think Kat is closer with Holly than she is with us. I think she's always been closer with Holly than she has been with us. And so that's just a no-go there. Cliff mentions that right after the veto ceremony, he saw Kat run straight to Holly and Jackson to have a long conversation. Those are the people that she goes to when things are tough. And so...
yeah, that's very telling. Yeah. Like when you're in a bad position and, you're vulnerable, the people that you're spending time with is very telling. Those and just the very fact that we see, Holly and Jackson kind of campaigning for Kat. If that's the people, right after a veto ceremony and the result is you are still vulnerable, you go to the people you're closest to kind of like regroup and be like, okay, so what is our plan going forward? If those are the two people that she runs off into a room in, like that just is just so obvious. So this is really bad on all three of their parts. Like if they're really, if Holly and Jackson are trying to play down how much they have Kat in their pocket in hopes to try to keep her, then that's bad on them. It's terrible for Kat because she's telling everyone else in the house that that Jackson is her target, yet she runs into a room right after the veto ceremony with the two of them. It's just really not good.
Yes. So things just continue to deteriorate for Kat over the course of the day. Nick is going to go to Cliff and pitch his final six plan to Cliff. Now, we know that Nick pitched it to Tommy. He pitched it to Sis and Christy. He's pitched it to Nicole. There's only one person left. He goes to Cliff. He says, here's my idea. It's going to be me, you, Nicole, Tommy, Christy, Sis. It's a 6. It's us 3 versus those 3. It'll be great. They would vote to keep you. What do you think, Cliff? And Cliff says, I love it.
Great.
I would do that in a heartbeat. Nick says
which is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and because of course. He was just talking to Nicole about how he needs to get those people to vote to keep him. And so Nick says they just want you to approach them to make a deal with them because they trust your word. And so if you give your word, then they will go along with it, and you will be able to stay this week, and we'll have a 6. It'll be great. It'll be great.
And I know you guys talked about this whole, move from Cliff's HOH a couple weeks ago, where he kept his word and played ball with Christy, is really paying dividends here because everything we hear is that Cliff is a man of his word. If if we shake on it, we know we can trust him. And I think it also really benefits him being on the block next to Kat, who numerous people are, saying that they don't have trust in, and that she's talking, she's relaying everything to everyone. But just the fact that Cliff did keep his word in that week that Bella went out is just really benefiting him, where, these people actually want to draw him in and feel confident that he will stick to this new 6 that they're trying to build together.
Yes, I remember how much crap I was getting for bringing this up weeks ago. But
I knew that you were going to say something.
But genuinely, what I had said a few weeks ago was that it is pretty rare in the Big Brother house for you to have an opportunity to fully just prove that your word is good, to really follow through in a spot where you could absolutely turn around and stab somebody in the back, but you don't. And by doing so, by proving that your word is good, that can be incredibly valuable in the house, and we're seeing that now pay off weeks later, where they fully believe that if Cliff gives his word, then he is solid to whatever the word is. And so He is basically given carte blanche to do whatever he wants as long as he swears on it. Then they feel like he is beholden to that, and it is very, very valuable to have.
And I think that it's also just something about Cliff himself. Like the type of person he is, also aids this whole perception of him. I
Hmm.
really think that if it were another person, maybe someone younger that doesn't have such like a gentle demeanor in the first place, it's a lot easier to talk yourself into not trusting this person. So when everyone always wants to think the best of the older person in the house, and that they're
Tell that to Alex from Big Brother 19.
Okay, well, I don't want to tell anything to Alex. Let's leave her out of this conversation. But in most cases, they're seen as like the fatherly figure, and someone that you want to have trust in, and less of a threat. And for Cliff to actually like come through on his word a couple weeks ago, I think that just him coming around, and coming through with that is just it's different than if it were even just Nicole. So I just think that there's just something about Cliff's personality that even just making the right move once, it's reiterating what people are hoping from someone like him. So I just think that it's something about his like character type.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like I've talked a lot about Derek during Big Brother 16. He used a great maneuver. He won HOH, and he a lot of people are like, don't win HOH early. It's kind of a dangerous thing to do. But Derek won HOH, and he took out Devin, and he did exactly what the house wanted. He said what he was going to do. He followed through. There was no tricky business. There were no there's no wavering, there was no plotting. He was very, very straightforward in what he did, and that won him a lot of trust in the house, because he got into a position of power, and he seemed very steady, very capable, and true to his word, and did what everybody wanted him and expected him to do, and that carried forward throughout the rest of the season really well. Cliff had an opportunity a few weeks ago, which was like an extreme version of that, where he was HOH, and he had the ability to like really, really just in a really concentrated point prove that he's good to his word, in a spot where he was going to be screwed anyway. And so he really made the best of that particular moment, and again, now it is paying off.
And with that said, I'm glad that he did this, and that it's hopefully, or seemingly going to keep him safe this week, and put him in a position where if certain people win HOH next week, he's probably safe. That said, I don't want him to be continuing to keep his word to these people, and I think that all of us are hoping that for his his longevity in the game, that this is not something that he actually continues to keep words for. So we'll see.
Yes. So, yes. So, I mean, personally, I feel like there's no way Cliff could intend to actually stick with this 6, especially, there's zero chance that Cliff tries to take out Jess or anything like that, in my opinion. So Nick, Sis, and Christy are going to talk about this deal. Nick he lets them know, hey, I went to Cliff and I talked to him about the 6, and he said in a heartbeat he's down. And Christy was like, oh, you talked to him, because he just came up to us and he was like, oh, I love, like, he was so happy. Oh man, I'm so happy about this. They get super excited. There are these moments in Big Brother where a new plan comes into fruition, or somebody gets exposed, or something happens, and the players get like really giddy about it, like, oh yes, yes. This is one of those moments for Sis and Christy. They're very excited about having Cliff on board. They trust him that much if he gives them his word, and with Cliff on board, that's a good enough competitor to really continue to fight against Jackson Holly, who they are not super fond of at the moment, and they feel really good about this 6. They feel really set in that once they get to 6, and they're like, let's do this. This is great.
And of course, Christy is going to be absolutely excited about any alliance going forward. That means that she doesn't have to work with Jackson and Holly.
Yes.
Obviously, Tommy's kind of quiet in this situation. he's saying, okay, great, this is great, and he's agreeing, and obviously he wants to keep Cliff this week as well. But it's pretty obvious that Tommy is the driving force for wanting to pick up Holly. And I really don't think that Christy wants any part of that. But, Tommy just kind of shuts his mouth in this conversation, but it's really Christy and Sis that are the most excited. And, Christy's reiterating, it's not the six. We're not going to call it the six. It's not the new six or anything. It's just us six are safe. We're safe until six. And this safe until six is like what keeps being said. And it reminded me of like the acronym that for like FAUTE, like was it like 5 of us together till the end. And so I'm like, oh, is this going to become an acronym? And I'm like, safe until 6, sus. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But anyway, it's like I just loved that they were insisting that this is not like the new 6, but it is a 6, and we're going to just stick together and be safe until the 6. It's like, okay, well, then it literally is basically the 6. So anyway,
if they refuse to name their alliance, we'll just start calling it sus.
They're sus. Yeah.
All right. So Christy is going to talk with Nicole about leaning toward the fact that she's leaning toward keeping Cliff. Nicole mentions the fact that Cliff noticed that Kat ran straight to Holly and Jackson after the veto ceremony. That's something that Christy hadn't even noticed, but definitely is another thing that sketches her out. And then Christy brings up, and this is something that Christy is bringing up a lot over the course of the day, that when she questioned Kat about, when Kat is claiming that she's targeting Jackson and Christy is not believing it, Christy was like, okay, so do you plan on campaigning to Holly and Jackson? And Kat's like, well, yeah. She's like, well, who are you telling them that you're going to target? And Kat was like, well, I mean, they know. I mean, I'm not going to tell Holly that I'm going to put her on the block, but it's like an unspoken thing. We know that we're targeting each other. And Christy is just really not buying it. Really not buying the whole situation, and so she tells Nicole about that, and again, that's going to be one of the big reasons why she's like, this whole thing is just no good.
Yeah, and what Christy continues to say throughout the day as well is that like, Kat is saying all these things to everyone, and she's promising that she's not going after all of these people, and she's saying that Jackson and Holly are her targets, but she ultimately just doesn't believe that Kat even would try to win HOH, and that she's just going to say what she needs to say to everyone, make the promises, but she's not going to put herself in a scenario where she actually has to come through on that so that she can wash her hands and be like, oh, if like I didn't win HOH, so I guess I can't do anything. Oh, I guess I can't protect you from, Jackson and Holly if they win, which is absolutely right. Like Christy is totally right about this. So it is very obvious that Kat doesn't have, she doesn't have a good plan going forward. And it's very obvious that if she were to stay, that she has no reason to gun for an HOH, because she's, if she were to be kept, then she's in a good position and doesn't need to show her cards.
Yes. So Christy, Sis, and Tommy are going to talk. Christy and Sis informing Tommy about the deal with Cliff. This is when Sis, I talked about this last night and I've tweeted about it as well. Sis goes, guys, I have a theory. My theory is that Kat claims she's going to target Jackson, but really she doesn't actually plan on doing it. And I've said it before. When Sis has you figured out, you need to drop this, and it's gonna get even worse as the day continues. That Kat really needs to stop trying to make this happen, because it's just not happening. But they explain the deal and the 6 to Tommy. Tommy is on board, but Tommy doesn't love the fact that Christy and Sis are getting deals too. He had talked to Nick about this a little earlier in the day, when Nick was talking about how Sis and Christy want deals from Cliff. He was like, "That's so annoying. Why do they need deals? They're not HOH.
I mean,
why? Yeah. Why are they getting deals? That's Tommy wants to be the only one." Yeah, Tommy wants to be the only one getting deals from Cliff. That Tommy's the one that should be kept safe here.
And it sounds like Cliff is going to be going, to speak to everyone individually about these deals, one-on-one with Christy and with Sis. And so this is really not good. There's deals happening, and Tommy's not even going to be present for them. So that's very annoying when Tommy has, really been the MVP of the week, keeping this alliance afloat, and now he's setting up everyone. Everyone else is getting set up with Cliff and Nicole by proxy, right?
Yes, and Tommy also doesn't want to take Cliff that far in the game. He would prefer to have Holly. He says, "Guys, I trust Holly. I think Holly's great. I love her. I'm obsessed with her. I think that if we get rid of Kat and Jackson, I think the only problem with Holly is Kat and Jackson. They get into her brain. But if Kat and Jackson are gone, then we can work with Holly." And so he would love to sort of get Holly involved once Kat and Jackson are able to go home.
Christy just kind of goes during this conversation. She's just like, yeah, like you can just tell it's so obvious. Like she's like, I don't actually really like this idea, but
yeah,
she's not like, you're HOH, so I'm not going to say absolutely not.
Christy and Sis are like, yeah, I mean, we don't need to go all the way to 6, I guess. I mean, maybe we can put Holly in, but again, you know what people really feel like that. The excitement about a plan is very, very telling in Big Brother. I always look at that as the barometer for, like, what do people actually want to do? You know something has worked when people get really excited about it. When you pitch something to somebody and they're like, yeah, maybe. No, yeah, we can totally do that. Nah. When you pitch something to somebody and they're like, oh man, I'm so excited about this. Yes.
That's genuine emotion. Like that's not a put on. Like
yeah. So when Sis and Christy are like, yeah, I mean, I guess we can put Holly in.
Yeah,
it's
like Holly's better without Jackson.
Yeah,
I guess.
They're very excited about having Cliff on their side. They want Cliff on their side. That's what they want. Tommy wants Holly. Tommy doesn't love the idea of Cliff getting too far in the game. He's scared of Cliff. He thinks Cliff can win this game. I think he's completely right, obviously.
But so can Holly.
Right.
I mean, she's not well positioned right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Tommy sort of sees that Cliff is. I think Tommy's kind of stuck because Tommy knows that Cliff is good to his word, and so they can make a good deal with Cliff. But at the same time, he doesn't trust Cliff. Like in the end game, like he doesn't want Cliff there. He's always had this thing with Cliff. He recognizes that Cliff is somebody that I think recognizes how good he is, and he recognizes how good Cliff is, and he would rather have other people who he trusts more. Like he trusts that Cliff is good to his word, but he doesn't want somebody that's smart and good to their word. He wants somebody like Nick, Sis, and Christy who are just undyingly loyal to Tommy, and he feels like he can get that from Holly once Kat and Jackson are gone.
And like I can't remember who said this in the I don't know if it was when Nick came and told them that Cliff was good with this plan, but it was either Nick or Christy was saying, and Cliff is totally okay if we vote him out at 6. Like he's cool if he just makes it to 6. Isn't that great? And it's just like, why would you ever believe someone when like
they all say and I believe, and Christy's like and I believe him and I believe him and Tommy is like, yeah, you know what, I believe that too, actually,
which is insane. Who is just like, get me to 6 and I am happy to go out at 6.
I mean, to hear people that are upset with Cliff and Nicole about making this deal, you'd think that a lot of the audience seems to believe it as well. But I guess Cliff is that good.
You have to agree with it when you're on the block and you need these votes to be saved. You absolutely take the deal. You say whatever you need to say. And if Cliff is actually saying, yeah, like, I know you guys have a stronger thing, and I know that you're going to choose each other before me. Just getting to the 6 is if I can just make it that far, I'll be, pleased as punch or whatever, something Southern that Cliff would say. But what person actually believes that is that's something that someone is going to go through to? So this is just like, again, another example of people really taking Cliff's word. And even Tommy pretending at least that he's taking his word for it. So I don't know. I just thought that was really funny that, Cliff is gonna, be the sixth, and he's totally gonna be fine if we just drag him to six and then get rid of him there.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Perfect. He'll give his word. He'll be trapped in his word. There's nothing he can do.
He'll have no moves. He'll definitely stick with this. Like, okay.
Man, it incites that feeling of greed. Like, yes, I've got him where I want him. He's trapped in his word.
And he can't walk well. He's injured.
Yeah.
He won't be able to run away to another alliance.
He did tell, when he was talking to Nick, Nick that I am playing up the injuries a little bit. I think he was trying to prove his worth in this theoretical six that's not an alliance. But who knows? Who knows exactly where where Cliff stands on his injuries? Because he was, like I said, he was having difficulty putting a shirt on the other day. He has taken the bandage off his arm. I think maybe his arm is healing a bit, but he certainly is still, I think, a bit hurt.
Well, they talk about it at some point too, where they're saying, we need Cliff for mental competitions. He's going to be no help with physical stuff, but we need him for the mental stuff. And I know that you guys were talking about it last night, like that Cliff isn't the kind of person that really benefits from a physical injury because he's already not seen as a physical threat in the first place. But I suppose that, if they're trying to draw him in and they're acknowledging that they need him to fill a role that other alliance members are not filling, sis, in terms of, being able to handle
Sis almost won on HOH, and she almost was able to throw the field trip, so...
Oh, and also, she is showing that she realizes that Kat might not actually be targeting Jackson. So she's sharper than we thought, right?
Man, Sis was like just put on the planet Earth to be the perfect goat in Big Brother, just hands down.
They
because
should have given her a goat costume instead of
right.
the chicken costume.
Because like she is blindly loyal. She is not gonna win in the final two unless she's sitting next to Nick. And
I'm not even fully confident in that, but anyway.
Look, I think it's a close vote. That's what I think. She can win against Nick. I'm not saying she will win against Nick. And she's also like so terrible at mental competitions. Like she cannot do her days at all, so she has basically zero chance of winning the final three HOH, right? Like unless she wins part one and then part three is back to the crapshoot, but part three is questions now, like days or events or whatever, so she's gonna lose it. She can't win final three HOH, which she is so perfect to take to the final three. It's unbelievable. She's like one of the most perfect people to take to the final three ever.
Yeah, and I really think that she's in it for the long haul, which is really disappointing because I echo what Melissa was saying last night on the round table, that at this point she's the only person that I would be more than happy to lose in this game because she has no impact on it aside from being a number for people that are actually playing the game and are doing well with it. But the only scenario I see where Sis goes is someone's trying to take a shot at Christy and Tommy, and they make the mistake of not putting them on the block together to start, maybe attempting some sort of like backdoor situation. And either Christy or Tommy take each other off in a veto situation, and Sis is the replacement nominee. But then I don't even this really depends on where the house shakes out in the following weeks. But that is really the only situation where, if someone is trying to weaken that three and they do not have the option of doing Christy or Tommy, that is the only situation I see where Sis goes. And I'm still really struggling to figure out how that even happens.
I think our best shot was the field trip. If she had managed to throw that competition, then she would have been on the block. And then Tommy still would have won the OTEV though, so it wouldn't have mattered. But that was our best chance of getting Sis out of the game.
It could have been some sort of butterfly effect thing there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. Jess and Nicole are going to talk. Jess is going to talk more. This is basically confirmation about what I've been theorizing about Jess for the last few days. She says she's not going to vote Kat out, but basically wouldn't mind seeing her go. That just, people would look at her differently if she voted to evict Kat, so she's not gonna do that. But she's always felt left out of Kat's strategic decisions and planning, and she kind of wants Cliff to stay. Nicole says she feels that way too. But yeah, it is hard. It's tough. They worry that Kat will blow up their alliance if she knows she's going to go home, so they're not sure how to handle the situation. And it's really just like a lot of Jess talking about Kat in a way that's like, yeah, I mean, she goes.
And Jess is really playing down her relationship with Kat in this conversation with Nicole, which I thought was very interesting. It was the first time for like that I had seen her say like, I don't know when this whole narrative of like Kat and I being like best friends, you know, came through. Like, it's not like we're attached at the hip. She spends more time with Holly and Jackson than anything, and she doesn't, like you said, she doesn't include me in game conversations. So I don't know why everyone thinks that we are, you know, it's the two of us to the end or anything like that. So I thought that was very interesting just to see Jess kind of, you know, talking about their relationship in a way where it's like, okay, she's actually not married to this situation, and maybe sees that at this point, her, you know, separating herself from Kat, even though she's probably going to vote to keep her just to, you know, keep the image of her being a loyal person. And, you know, she probably needs Kat's vote if she ever gets to the end of this game, even though I don't know if she has any win equity anyway. But I think that it's best for her to, you know, just keep working on this relationship with Nicole and Cliff. And she does a good job in this conversation. I mean, I know no one really likes to give Jess any credit for anything. But I do think that this was a good conversation between Jess and Nicole, where she's going to be in a better spot with Nicole and probably be one of Nicole's number one allies after this week when Kat goes, and just kind of slides into that, you know, Nicole slides into that position of, you know, Jess's best friend possibly, and someone that she actually talks game with, which is what she says she doesn't do with Kat.
It is very important to recognize, you know, I've been saying over the last few days, you know, Jess has a 3-hour conversation with Christy. Then the next day, Jess has a 3-hour conversation with Tommy. Then the next day, Jess has a 3-hour conversation with Christy. Those long conversations have been indoctrinations for Jess. They have been spending a lot of time turning Jess against Holly and against Kat. That's been really the goal in those conversations. They've been bringing up the fact that Holly was, when she was HOH, she wanted to target Nicole, and Kat was a part of that. And, you know, Kat volunteered, and they're concerned about Kat's relationship with Holly and all of this stuff. So all of the things that are now coming out of Jess to Nicole, I do believe stem from these conversations with Christy and Tommy. Jess is also advising Nicole that they should be working with Tommy and Christy, that those are the more trustworthy people in the house, really pushing Nicole and eventually Cliff to be like, hey, you guys should work with Tommy and Christy. Unbeknownst to Jess, that means that she's the one that gets left out, that even though she feels like she has the best relationship with them, she actually has the worst one with them at the moment because of Nick. And speaking of Nick, Nicole is going to try to make peace with Jess and Nick. She says, hey, you know, I don't like that you guys are targeting each other. You're both allies of mine. I feel like we should try to bridge this gap. I don't want you going after each other.
Yeah, she makes the comparison of Fessy and Scotty from last season, and she's like, which is like a great cautionary tale, where she says, I feel like, you know, we have common interests in that you, for some reason, you guys just don't trust each other and can't get on the same page. And I really just want you guys to get on the same page. So I thought that was a very funny comparison to the Fessy and Scotty situation from last season, because wow, did that ever screw things up.
Yeah. Nicole, Jess is also going to tell Nicole about the conversation she had with Kat the night before that I talked about, had weird vibes, where Jess was like, stop campaigning. And she was like, she said, I'm just trying to touch base with people. And I was like, that is campaigning, Kat. That is campaigning. She doesn't listen to me.
Jess is explaining the game mechanics to you. again, it's almost like the cis thing. It's like that's kind of, that's kind of scary. If Jess is telling you how campaigning works, big yikes.
Yeah. So Nick is going to talk to Kat and basically
Oh my gosh.
interrogate her about her claims about going after Jackson, where most people are just like, are you really going after Jackson, though? Nick is just flat out going, look, I don't believe that you're going after Jackson. You're lying to me right now. And Kat's like, no, I'm not. I'm definitely going after Jackson. And he's like, come on, Kat. Come on. He was on the block last week. You didn't vote him out. You spend all of your time with Holly and Jackson. You mean to tell me that your target in the house is not me, is not Tommy, Christy, Cliff, Nicole. It's not any of these people. It's your two best friends that you spend all of your time with, Jackson and Holly. You're really trying to tell me that? And Kat's like,
I don't spend that much time with them.
what do I? I mean, I don't
Come
hang out with them that much.
on.
I am telling you that. Yeah, they're my targets.
It's such a terrible, awkward conversation. I think in my notes, I was just like, most awkward conversation between Kat and Nick, which I feel like there have been numerous, but this one was just so, and then Christy comes into the room at some point and it's just the same thing over and over again where Kat is trying to reiterate that she's really not that close with Holly and Jackson, and that it's not so much that she's against Holly and Jackson, it's really just Jackson, but that she would go out, put the two of them up, and that it's just, again, this unspoken thing where, Jackson and her just have this understanding where they are against each other. And, Nick is just being so blunt with his, suspicion of this and just being like, I just can't believe that is a real thing. Like, that just does not make sense. And then Christy rolls into the room and she's like, oh, am I interrupting? And then they're like, Nick's like, nah, it's fine. So Christy gets into the bed and is just laying there and
just watching.
And Nick just continues to go, and he was also sitting in this weird position. It was a very strange conversation.
Yeah,
his legs were up in the air.
That bed on the end of the RV room is directly below a camera, which is gonna come into play later in the night when Jess is drunk and falls off the bed. But it goes directly down on them, and so at one point Nick is, I want to say, straddling the camera with his legs. His legs are up in the air and just right there.
I've done this before, though, where you tip onto the upper part of your back, and then you point your legs up into the air, and your butt is off the bed as well. Mm-hmm. It was just such a weird conversation. The dynamic between them was so uncomfortable because Nick was just basically being so upfront, being like, I just don't believe that. And Kat was doing such a terrible job of being like, no, I mean, I feel like I don't spend that much time with it. And you can see the gears going in her head where she's like, oh, they really can tell how much, oh shit, I'm spending too much time with them, and everyone's seeing and they're calling me on it. And then Christy comes in and there's a camera panning on Christy's face, just listening to the conversation. And then Nick's weird body motions. It was just a circus, really.
Yeah. Kat is going to go to Jess after this conversation and be like, I don't understand why nobody believes that I'm targeting Jackson. I'm telling the truth. I really am targeting them. And Jess is like, okay, mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely are. Kat goes to Holly and she's like, nobody's believing me. Nobody believes it. Nobody believes it. We've got to stick to the lie, though. We have to stick to the story.
That's what you do in this situation. When no one's believing your story, literally anyone, and they have no problem saying to your face that they don't believe you, maybe time to come up with a new plan. Maybe a new strategy.
They're never gonna get anywhere because they can't go anywhere because there's a huge barrier in the way of any plans they make from this point forward, and that barrier is that nobody believes they're telling the truth about targeting each other, and nothing else can happen until they remove that barrier and say, you know what, we were lying, you caught us, we were lying,
but what is that gonna do?
Let's move forward from here.
I feel like the damage is done, though, because they've tried to stick to this lie about being against each other for so long now, that and it's making zero progress with anyone in terms of campaign. obviously, continuing with that same lie isn't going to help them. But I almost feel like the damage is done. And if they try to, change the story and be like, oh yeah, like you got us, we actually are working together. I really don't know how they're going to pitch themselves as like people that you want to work with when they're still clearly a strong trio and they've been trying to lie about it. So I don't know what their plan. I don't know what saves them here.
I think you have to just go full nuclear. You have to admit, like, okay, look, because they already know. Until you admit something that they already know, they're never going to take anything else you say at all. So Kat has to go to them and just be like, you guys are right. I wasn't really targeting Jackson. Here's what was happening. We made a deal, the three of us, that I would say I was targeting Jackson, but I wasn't really targeting Jackson. I really was at one point, but eventually we made a deal like, oh, nobody would know. Nobody would realize if we kept saying we were targeting each other. We thought that we were so clever, but you guys caught us, and now I'm in this terrible position, and they're willing to let me go now. Like, and the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm pissed at them right now, because they are letting this whole situation happen and they're not sticking up for me. They're just sitting back and isolating themselves and talking with Cliff and Nicole and Jess and trying to get onto those people's sides. They're trying to make an alliance with Cliff, Nicole, and Jess, and they're leaving me out to dry. And so I want to expose their entire game at this point. Like, you have to just completely throw them under the bus and go for it and say, hey, you know what? Cliff, Nicole, and Jess, they're part of an alliance called Cliff's Angels, and so now Holly and Jackson are trying to get in with them and trying to be good with them even after I leave, and I'm not on board with it. I've been sticking to the same story that they keep telling me that I need to stick to the story, that I don't trust Jackson and that I'm targeting Jackson, but I'm not sticking to that anymore. I'm not going to do what they want anymore. I'm exposing everything about their game. I think that's what she has to do.
I think that yeah, obviously that's the Hail Mary that you make. I still just have a hard time seeing anyone going forward with that, because so much of the conversation about keeping Kat is just that there's not really a lot of trust in her. I think that I see a lot of people being like, we can't risk this being fake or her just saying this to keep herself this week and her scurrying back to them if they win power next week.
Right, but I think that it's 1,000 times more effective and more likely to work than sticking with the same line. Like, she has to try it. Like,
yeah,
that's,
I agree.
Like, and I think it absolutely could work. Like, I do not think people are married to this idea. Tommy is not in love with the idea of working with Cliff and Nicole. Sis and Christy now are, and certainly if she had done this a few days ago, it would have been much, much more effective, even more so. But I do think that there is a chance that this works. There's a good chance that it works, in my opinion. Not to say that it's more likely to work than not, because it's probably not at this point. It is, every day she waits makes it less likely to work, but she needs to do something, because what she's doing is nothing and it's not working.
And I think that Nick kind of has not done a great job here by letting Kat in on, if ultimately they want Kat out, I don't think that he does a great job of showing her so blatantly that no one believes this.
Nick shouldn't be telling her.
No, yeah. I know. That was what I was thinking when I was watching Christy's face during this conversation. Like, I have to feel like Christy's being like, shut up. Because it's not good for Christy to know that she's in trouble. This is what Nicole talks about on the hammock with Jess earlier in the evening, where she says, I'm leaning towards getting out Kat, but I don't want to say anything about how I'm leaning until a little bit closer to the vote, because as they acknowledge, Kat could really screw their game. And Nick needs to be aware of this as well, that like, it's not good for him to have, Kat realize what deep of water she's in and scrambling for any play. Like, they truly need to wait until the last minute to really show her that she's in trouble. So this blunt conversation he has with her is really not great. But it doesn't seem like she's going to change her plan just yet, though. So right. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter.
He's giving her all the information she needs. Lucky for him, she is not using
it. Doesn't care. Yeah.
So Holly is going to go to Jackson and let him know about the situation, that people don't believe that Kat is targeting Jackson, and Jackson's response is, wait, she's saying she's targeting me? Since when?
What does he think what does he think she's doing?
So, man, what an unspoken thing that they've got going on there. Holly,
Great, yeah, great chemistry here.
yeah. Holly says that, man, I wish that Christy had stayed on the block, because then we could take out Christy, and then we could have worked with Tommy and Sis, and we could have just replaced Christy with Kat in the group, and everything would have been fine. But stupid Christy, stupid Tommy had to win the veto, and now Christy's off the block, and now we can't do that.
And they are picking up on the fact that they feel like Nick and Nicole are, kind of sliding into the place in that group that Jackson and Holly once occupied. They're not really acknowledging Cliff in this situation, but because Nick and Nicole have been spending so much time together, they're realizing that, this isolation plan that they've had for this week, where they just kind of are off on their own doing their own thing, is really screwing themselves here, because they are missing out on these conversations. They're not a part of any big talks, and they're leaving space for, a Nick and Nicole to move in with their previous allies, and they're starting to realize that this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, they're recognizing that instead of replacing Christy with Kat and joining that group, now they're just being replaced by Nick and Nicole. They want to maybe start telling people, hey, we've been holding back intentionally. Like, they want to start telling people that it's not personal, that it was a game move to isolate themselves. But again, this might be a little too late at this point. But this talk again, like, reiterates to me that if Christy had stayed on the block and was going home, that Jackson and Holly's plan was to then get back in with Tommy and Sis and just replace Christy with Kat, and that would have been the group. And I fully believe that Tommy and Sis would have been on board with it. We know that Tommy had made a deal with Jackson that if Christy needs to go, Christy needs to go. We know that Sis was not super fond of Christy, so losing Christy wouldn't have been the biggest deal to Sis, and they absolutely could have worked together at that point. They probably would have brought Nick in as well to make it 3-3. That would have been the 6, in my opinion. That would have been the plan moving forward.
Yeah, and the big issue is still this, this looming Christy versus Jackson thing that just has not resolved since the big day 44 blow up. And until one of them goes, that group isn't going to, come together. But I don't know. It's just like we've been saying, Tommy is the one that really wants to pull Holly in when Jackson, ultimately goes. But with them needing to keep Christy, and, Christy's not going this week, they're really, that group is not going to become a thing. But you can see that Tommy is still kind of hoping that somehow Jackson goes out next week, and then he can kind of be the person that picks up Holly, and then maybe kind of foil this idea of having Cliff and Nicole as the 5 and 6 here. But as long as Christy and Jackson are in the house, that group is never going to be back together. And because Christy got pulled off of the block, this isn't going to happen.
Yes. So they talk about their plan. They're obviously still not aware that Kat is going to be leaving for sure. And so they think that with Kat in the house, that's an important caveat to this. They think that Kat is still going to be in the house, and with Kat still in the house, their plan is targeting Nick. They want to put Nick and Nicole on the block, and Holly wants to take Nick out if the nominations stay the same. Jackson would love to backdoor Christy if given the opportunity. Holly would consider doing that if given the opportunity. That's with Kat going home, or Kat staying this week. We know that Kat is likely going home at this point, and there will likely be some tension that happens when they learn about that for sure, and that they are opposed to Tommy and Christy. So we'll see if that changes their plan moving forward, if they're willing to be a bit more direct in targeting Christy or Tommy or whoever at that point. I have a feeling that it might blow up a little bit, and that they would be more willing to just throw up like Christy and Sis or something along those lines to try to take Christy out more directly once Kat goes home.
The issue is that, if pretty much everyone besides the two of them get rid of Kat, I don't, the writing is on the wall for them that they're kind of screwed. And so it's hard to figure out. They know that they can't just survive the rest of the game, just the two of them with no other allies. So it really makes you wonder that do they just pretend that they're okay with it and still try to get back in with Tommy, or do they say, okay, this plan is scrapped, this is never going to work, and we were against Nick and Nicole, but now they're our only hope to try to to actually get to break up the Christy Tommy sis thing.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say, but they can't do this on their own. They can't just be like, oh, well, one of the two of us is just going to keep winning HOHs. It's not realistic. So if everyone except for Jess, votes out Kat, then it will be interesting to see where that leaves them and who they want to turn back to, because they've really not been gaming with anyone all week. So it's really hard to tell what they're going to do.
Yeah, basically their plan is if Kat stays, then they want to try to continue to appease the other side and work with Christy for the temporary situation, and just get rid of Nicole and Nick, because then they get that spot. And with Kat there to support them, they're okay in that spot. However, once Kat leaves, I have to imagine that they're going to recognize that there's now two groups in the house: Nicole, Cliff, and Jess, and Tommy, Christy, Nick, and Sis. And if they put up two people from both of those sides, then they're pissing off both sides, and that could be very tricky for them. And that they probably would need to just pick one side and stick with it. I would imagine, again, especially if they just got lost Kat because of Tommy and Christy, that they would be a little more willing to just fully go and take the swing at those people. So we'll have to wait and see on that one, but definitely interesting to see where they go from here. Cliff is gonna let Tommy and Christy know individually, briefly. He hasn't had a long conversation with either of them yet, but he does let them know briefly, hey, I'm in on the plan, I'm down for it, I like it, let's do it. So that's beginning to solidify there. They're also going to get alcohol in the night, and
they tried to save it. Like, oh, because they were all gonna go to bed. They're like, yeah, like early night, and then Big Brother's like, I have alcohol.
Yes. There's a lot of gross conversation that happens, especially around Nick, who
what a shocker,
really just likes to talk about what he likes to do.
I mean, I am a self-proclaimed oversharer, and I am not easily made uncomfortable in conversations, especially personal ones where other people are oversharing. But I also recognize that I am probably in the minority when it comes to that, and I also recognize that Nick is like really like on the far end of oversharing, way too personal in his conversations. And you need to have the self-awareness to understand that like not everyone is going to be comfortable in those situations, and maybe read the room, because even Christy, who is someone that I also consider to be a little bit of like a overshare, she talks a lot, she's very
Christy's
open.
Definitely one of them, yeah.
She's definitely one of them. When and Nick has a good relationship with her when it comes to that kind of stuff, if even she's kind of like, Nick, you're taking it too far. And like throughout the day she was like on the hammock, and like he kept on like rubbing the hammock with his foot, and I guess he like his toes kept like poking her butt, and she's like, Nick, stop with your feet. And like she makes these comments throughout the night where she's like, stop, you're always rubbing me with your feet. It's like, oh my God, Nick, listen to these conversations, like listen to what people are saying. Like if you're making Christy uncomfortable, who you have like a close relationship with, and she's very open, and like that is not a good sign. So
Nick is the guy in this whole situation, who they're playing Never Have I Ever, and they're talking about various acts of intimacy.
I love watching how you're going to verbalize this.
Yeah, this is a tough one. They're talking about various specific forms of intimacy, and Nick is the guy that is like, wait, you don't eat this? You don't eat this thing? What? How you've never done that? You've never eaten it? And like he says that, and that's annoying by itself, right? But people ignore him when he does it. Like they didn't like they're not addressing it. They're like no, haven't. But Nick is the guy that continues to do it. Really though, you've never done this?
Also, can I just say,
doing this is so much fun though. I do it all the time, Jenny. You've never done it?
The person that is obnoxious about this sort of thing is the worst. Like, I'm someone who's very open, likes to talk about things, don't mind having people talk about things. I would probably be an active participant in this conversation, but like, I would be giving Nick side eye, being like, okay, we get it, dude. Like, it's like being that person that's like, I'm a really nice guy. Like, I'm a really, really nice guy. It's like, if you have to announce so much that you're into something, it's just like, okay, we get it. You really think you're good at something and you feel like you need to advertise it to everyone. It is just, for the person that might be on the receiving end of such attention, it's actually quite a turn off. It's just like, okay, shut up. We get it. Like, you don't need to advertise your skills. It's good. You can stop now. So
yeah, very annoying.
Like, not even working for people that like, for someone like me that wouldn't be that super uncomfortable, I'd be like, just shut up. And he does this in other conversations that aren't even of this nature. Like Nick, other people will be talking and Nick will just keep going and just like kind of like speak louder over them. Like, he for someone who is a therapist, like, he really needs to learn when to stop talking and let the other person talk. I see him doing this all the time. So yeah, the strategy of just speak louder about the thing that people are ignoring is not a good strategy.
Yeah. Nicole, though, is going to just be more amazing, in my opinion. Nicole doesn't want to take part in the whole thing. And she's just like, no, guys, I'm not into it. She goes downstairs. She says, America, follow me. Follow me over here.
So
this way.
Cute.
She goes to make her bed, and she says, America, I have a secret to tell you that as an educator, as Miss Nicole or Miss Anthony, I want to tell you that everything in moderation, and stay true to yourself. I have learned that I don't need to be up there, playing a silly game, being uncomfortable. I can be true to myself and be down here making my bed. That's how I feel about things. And if there are other people out there in America who I'm sure there are who feel the same way as me, I want you to know that's okay. That's okay. You can be true to yourself.
Message. Yeah, it was really cute. And she's like, Miss Nicole had a drink, but it's okay. You can do that. And you don't need to feel peer pressure to be a part of the group.
Yes.
You can go off and do your own thing, and that is okay.
Yeah, and I love that when she was saying that she didn't want to play the game, Tommy was like, "Oh my God, that's my brother to a T. That is exactly my brother." Like, I think there's a real ship here going on between Nick and Nicole and Tommy's brother. I feel like there's a spark there. There's something.
Is Tommy obsessed with it? Oh my God, I'm obsessed with it.
He's obsessed with it. Really, really, I love Nicole. I love that she did that. Nick is going to talk with Sis and Tommy. Nick, Sis, and Tommy talking late in the night in the bed. Nick, by the way, after they fall asleep, is going to be there's going to be some canoodling between Nick and Sis. Not like full on canoodling. Not like, what? You wouldn't do this? But some cuddling.
I mean, it's not shocking. Jack isn't there anymore. Nick gives Sis attention. Sis is not interested in the actual game. So, of course, she's going to welcome this sort of attention. And yeah, I mean, Nick is a very touchy person in general. Like, this is obviously a very over-reported thing about Nick. We all see it, but yeah, I don't know. I hope that people aren't being jerks and like tweeting at Bella, because I'm sure that's already happening.
Mhm.
Not fun. Everyone's cuddling in the house to a degree, and Nick is very, very touchy, and that is just him as a person. I don't think he should be doing this though.
Yeah, so it's a little more than just cuddling, in my opinion. That's why I say it's not full on canoodling. It's not canoodling.
Okay, so
but it's not just it's not just like
canoodling?
it's not just spooning either, right? It's like we've got spooning and we've got face to face cuddles. And face to face cuddles while you're sleeping. That's not a very comfortable position. That's not like a default like spooning position.
Yeah,
that's like
not comfortable.
that's intentionally cuddling.
Yeah. That's not just falling asleep in the natural position. It just so happens. So we need to figure out what this term is for the spot, the intentional cuddling spot between cuddling and canoodling. If you have
canoodling is once some funny business starts happening.
Once the noodle becomes involved.
No.
Hey, Taran.
So before this happens, they had been talking in bed, Nick, Sis, and Tommy, basically just about like they were just doing some other stuff. Basically just, you know what, Tommy, I would just love to lose to you. Oh yeah, me too. I would love to lose to you, Tommy. They were both just falling over themselves to be like, let me lose to you, Tommy. No, let me lose to you, Tommy. I want to lose to you.
I hate this so much. I hate it so much. And I really like, this is my frustration with Nick as well, because like Nick obviously knows the game, and he, we've seen him talk about like wanting to go to the end with someone like worthwhile, and in not just taking the easy way out, and like taking the goat and winning against them. But it's just like, it's so annoying to hear all of these people acknowledging that they lose to Tommy and just being like, can't wait, love that for me, love that losing finalist against my friend spot.
I hope I get to do it.
Yeah, I hope I'm the
get to lose.
person that is like laughed at for being dumb enough to take you to final two, or let you get to final two, and hope that I'm the person that ends up next to you. Like, oh my goodness. I hate it.
Yeah, so that's what we got. Anything else you wanted to bring up, Jenny?
Well, I mean, no one's gonna come up with the term between cuddling or canoodling, so I don't know what else we have to talk about. Oh, if anyone else is, this is totally ungame related, but if anyone else is interested in astrology like my crazy self, there's a long astrology conversation in the middle of the day in the pool. So if anyone is curious about what everyone's signs are, and talk about that nonsense, flashback to yesterday afternoon. I personally enjoyed it because I'm like, at least if they're going to be not talking about game, I'd rather listen to them talk about astrology than what Nick's eating habits are. So anyway.
There you go. All right, that's what we have for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. You can now purchase a Taran Show shirt. You can find that on my Twitter at Armstrong Taran, and there will soon be a button on the Twitch page as well if you are interested in that.
They look great.
Thank you.
Nice.
The
I saw the picture that you retweeted of someone wearing it. It looks really good.
Thank you. The service I'm using currently has 15% off for the first 2 weeks of the store being open. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Very much appreciative of everyone who is buying a shirt. It's very, very cool to see my logo on people. So thank you to everyone that has bought one. And as I mentioned, at Armstrong Taran on Twitter, you can find me there. Jenny, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jenny Autumn.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much. I will be back tomorrow morning, of course, at 11 a.m. Eastern to update on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 21 live feeds. And then tomorrow night, I will be back to recap the Wednesday night episode of Big Brother. And then Thursday night, we'll be back once again to talk about the eviction episode, where we will likely see Kat go home. But I don't think that's totally locked in yet.
There's time. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.